Okay. Hello, everyone. We have here with us Funmi Koya. He will be doing an interview with us. My name is Vinny Dev, and I'm part of the logistics team for YCM. My first question for you is, do you believe that dispute prevention and resolution skills are in fact life skills?
Let me just make sure I understood your question. Did you say, do I believe that dispute resolution skills are life skills?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that whether in your personal life or within your work life, you'll always encounter situations where the ability to resolve the differences between people is absolutely paramount. It just makes life so much easier if you're able to reach into a rich tapestry of skills that you gain from having understood what disputes are about and how exactly to resolve them. So yes, I do believe that.
Okay. The next question is, how have dispute resolution skills benefit you in a personal or on a professional level?
Dispute resolutions, from a personal perspective, let me give you some context. So I live in the UK, but culturally I'm Nigerian through and through. And one thing that we do in Nigeria is we negotiate everything. And where there's a negotiation, there's always a need to be able to resolve differences, whether it's between people, whether it's between groups. There's always a need for that skill. So from my personal benefit, working, whether it's within the family, whether it's with friends, colleagues, we're always, we almost always find ourselves in positions where a cool, level head is required. And I think that's where the dispute resolution skills come into it. I use them to make sure that everybody gets a voice, everybody is engaged, and all those who are concerned leave the conversation or leave the discussion feeling that they've won. The idea is to, as we say in negotiations, that they've crossed the golden bridge and they've shook hands somewhere in the middle. And that's the benefit I bring from having dispute resolution skills. As I said, that's whether it's in my private life or within organizations.
I think that's a beautiful way to put dispute resolution, having both parties win and to meet on the golden bridge. That's amazing. So the next question would be, do you think it is important for the youth to know skills of dispute resolution and conflict management?
Do I think that youth should have dispute resolution skills, and what was the second bit?
And conflict management skills.
Oh, and conflict management skills. Absolutely. I think that one of the things, before I actually studied dispute resolution and negotiations, etc., and psychology behind it, I had years of, because as I said earlier, for cultural reasons, I'd learned already to resolve disputes and to look for negotiated settlements between people. So it was something that I knew right up front from the time I was a child, because I watched my parents, I watched my grandparents, I watched the village that my grandmother lived in, how they resolved conflict. I was then lucky enough when I came to returned, I should say, to the West, to get a formal education in dispute resolution and in conflict management and negotiations, etc. So I was able to combine what I'd learned culturally and through many years of actually practice. I was then able to put that to this using the formal skills that I picked up through learning at university and through practice.
Quite interesting.
So yes, I think those skills have served me really, really well. I seem to be the peace broker in just about everything, and that's why I followed a career in that route. So I enjoy it thoroughly, and I actually think that I do make a difference. And I think it's very satisfying and rewarding. I think any youth coming through your system would benefit hugely from having those skills and actually being able to use them in a practical sense.
Okay. The next question is, what skills do you think are most vital to the role of a mediator?
What skills are most vital in the role of a mediator?
Yes.
It always, when my grandmother was teaching me to work with others, she always says, the Lord gave you these in this proportion, one of these, two of these, right? Use them in that proportion. You listen twice as hard as you speak. So you need to listen, understand, put yourself in the shoes of others before making any form of deliberation. You must be non-judgmental. You've got to learn the ability, or you've got to develop the ability to listen without prejudice, and to not influence the how people make up their minds. What you've got to do is actually coach them, as it were, so that they themselves make their own decisions. I think the primary skill, or the primary thing that every mediator needs to take away, is never make the situation worse. So what you've got to make happen is for people to come to their own conclusions, but to do it in such a way as to not rock the boat and not to alienate the person with whom the dispute is with. You've got to keep them talking, keep them listening to each other, keep them talking to each other. That's the role of the mediator. It is not to change anybody's mind necessarily. They're not judge and jury.
I see why you're the peace broker among friends. So the next question is, do you think that our work as a conflict management manager aid in the achievement of goals, or would it be like an unnecessary intervention?
Well, it's certainly not an unnecessary intervention. I mean, a lot of the time, what people actually need is somebody to help them focus, to keep bringing them back to their primary goal. So if you start out from the position of asking your the people involved in the disputes or in conflict, you start out by asking the question, what is it that you want to achieve by the end of this session that we're doing? And then to find ways for them to develop their own path towards enlightenment, as it were. As I said earlier, it is not for for us as dispute prevention and resolution people. It's not our job to tell them what to do. It's our job to guide them using their own thoughts and their own ideas about how to get to that end goal from a starting position, which is usually a hazy picture. Most of us have an idea where we want to get to, but it's not focused. Our role as mediators is to help them find what that, that laser focus on, this is my end goal, this is where I'm going, how do I get there? That's one of the key things. It's not always so clear in the end, but that's what we try to get to. This is where I want to get to. Okay, how am I going to do that without messing up the other person, the other parties.
Okay. So the next question is a bit personal to you. So like, as a business psychologist, have you ever come across any situation where you had to apply your mediation skills in?
Well, yes, as a business psychologist and a project manager, project program manager, this is bread and butter to my profession. Look, every project manager is in dispute, and I put that in inverted commas, with potentially their client, potentially their project management office. Actually, that's where I've found is the biggest disputes actually happen between the project manager and the project management office. Why? Because the project manager, his focus or his or her focus is on delivering specific deliverables on time, on budget, at a certain quality. The PMO or the project management office is there for governance and to make sure things are being done properly. A lot of the project managers just see this as an extra layer of difficulty. They don't see it as a necessary intervention. And where my skills as a business psychologist come in is in getting those two parties together. So your PMO, in your project or your program directors, and getting them to talk to each other. And what I've done and continue to do is to run facilitated sessions with each of those groups right at the outset to make sure that there is pre-engagement so that the senior responsible owner knows exactly what they are going to do, when they're going to be called upon. And from the project manager's perspective, they know exactly when they're going to tap the senior responsible owner for their expertise, for their help, their assistance, etc. And also so that there's between the SRO, the project program manager, that intermediary, the PMO, is also fully aware, because after all, we're giving all these titles. The PMO is usually a group of people. And it's wherever there's people, there's potential for conflict. And we've got to work with all three parties to make sure that projects are delivered harmoniously. Where people are in dispute, we tend to find that projects struggle or fail. So that's where I take the business psychology model into the workplace.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So in your opinion, how can young adults, like what can they do to inculcate dispute resolution skills in their daily life?
I think they need to be observant. One of the things that we tend to do is we have these labels. And we say, oh, this guy is a negotiator. This guy is, or this girl is or this lady is a dispute resolution specialist, etc. And we've given them these great big labels. And so whenever they turn up into a group, they are seen with that label. And I think for the youth, actually, what they want to do is not turn up with the label because it's baggage. Even before you've started, you're already standing there with this label above your head, which is pulling you down, because people have an expectation. Hang on, you're the negotiator, you're the dispute specialist. This is your job. You've got to deal with it. And actually, the skills are far more subtle than that. It's about observing, trying to really get a deep understanding of what the issue is or what the issues are, and then try understanding who the key players are and what their angle is. What is it that the key players are trying to get out of each thing, and then to start deploying or employing your skills. If you go there already with people thinking, all right, there's our specialists, they're going to sort everything out. Well, it's a bit like going to the doctor with a broken leg. You expect the doctor to fix you, and then the doctor says, yes, but I'm a doctor of economics. You've got the wrong doctor. Okay. So, and yeah, it's the same. What I'm saying is you turn up and hopefully don't give an expectation until you're absolutely certain that you are the right person for that role. And if you have to say, no, this is not for me, then you really do need to have the guts to say, this is not for me. And hopefully you can recommend somebody who has the expertise in the area. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes.
Okay, good.
So do you think that the youth has the power to change our country's dispute resolution culture, where nowadays people are so quick to take an adversarial approach?
I do believe that the youth, the change in cultures and the way ahead has got to be through the youth. I think people of a certain age, without wishing to be ageist, have already embedded in their psyche the way things should be. I mean, how often did my parents used to say to me, well, in our day, this is how it happened. You know what? The world has moved on. And to be honest, the youth have got, at some point, these people who I'm looking at as youth, at some point, they're going to take over. Yeah. Right? They are going to be running the show. So it's nice to have a history. It's nice to have a reference point steeped in the past and an understanding of where our parents came from and how they got to where they are now. But in the end, they've got to hand over that mantle to the youth, or what we, the older generation, describe as the youth. That's a very difficult thing. That's, that whole change mindset is, well, this is how we've always done it. That's gone out the window. Life has changed, and the youth have got to start influencing the older generations so that they are prepared and ready to accept, slowly but surely, the changes that are ahead. So yeah, there is a huge place for the youth.
Okay, that is quite reassuring for all the youth out there.
Good.
So the next question, it's about the current situation. Because of COVID-19, we have a lot of intergenerational or like intragenerational conflicts going on. It's a very stressful time. Do you have any tips or any ideas for the people who have not had conflict management training on how they can prevent or resolve these conflicts?
Well, the intergenerational conflict is not, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing to do with the COVID and the pandemic. But what the pandemic has shone a light on is those differences in perceptions and understanding. So when I've spoken to people who have said, well, I don't want my parents to have the vaccine because they're fearful for whatever reason. That's not a helpful position to take, to be so absolute. And I think that's caused a lot of conflict. Sorry, repeat your question. Because I've gone off topic.
It's about giving some sort of advice or some sort of tips for the people who haven't had conflict management training.
Right, okay, sorry. So in terms of conflict management training, sorry, I went off topic there. In terms of not having conflict management training, those who have had conflict management training really need to cascade those ideas downwards and across their communities. And I think that the key message is we won't make things worse. If we start from that perspective, we won't make things worse. Let's move from there. That would be my advice, is get the message out there. Let's talk about stuff. Let's, as we say over here, let's have a meeting. I'm not so sure about having, because a lot of the time you have a meeting and nothing gets achieved. And that's even more, that adds more frustration, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But if we're talking about let's not make things worse, then there's a discussion to be had. So let's find ways to get to dialogue. So, you know, whether it's one-to-one dialogue, one to group, you know, group to one, whatever it takes, get the dialogue going and make sure everybody's listening to each other, make sure everybody's engaged and has the opportunity to speak. One of the things that I haven't said is the importance of a safe space. People need to have trust that when they're speaking to you, whatever they're saying is going to remain confidential if they ask you to. I mean, the mediator's role has got to be confidential anyway. But you need, the audience needs to be reassured that they are speaking in a safe space. And so those are some of the things that I'd be keen to get across.
Okay. And for the final question, do you have any advice or a message for the aspiring lawyers and mediators out there?
Well, I would say to them that dispute prevention skills are life skills. And they really, whether you're a lawyer, dispute resolution specialist, a negotiator, whatever it is, think about dispute prevention in your activities. Right throughout whatever you do, think about what's the potential for dispute to arise and what am I going to do about it? Always think about that. In project management terms, you'd be thinking about risk and how am I going to mitigate against risk. As a dispute prevention specialist, you really need to be thinking about what might spark the dispute, or what is the dispute, and what skills can I deploy to head it off at the pass.
Okay. And if you could say the quote out now, please.
So the quote I have is, dispute prevention skills are life skills. I'll say that again, dispute resolution skills are life skills. You can resolve it.
That was perfect, thank you. I will just stop the recording now.